Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a truly epic story, one that defies our modern understanding of exploration. Imagine setting sail across an ocean so vast, so seemingly endless, that most civilizations believed it was the edge of the world. Now imagine doing that without a compass, without a sextant, without GPS, or even paper maps. Sounds impossible, right? And yet, the ancient Polynesians didn't just survive these journeys. They mastered them, regularly navigating thousands of miles of open water with pinpoint accuracy. They never got lost, not in the way we understand it. It's a reality check on what human ingenuity is truly capable of when put to the ultimate test. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're up for it, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always wild to see how far these tales travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself on a sun-drenched beach, the warm Pacific lapping at your bare feet. The air is thick with the scent of salt and flowering plumeria. Before you, a magnificent double-hulled voyaging canoe rests on the sand. Its sails of woven pandanus matting furled, ready for the next adventure. This isn't just a boat. It's a floating home, a lifeline, capable of carrying dozens of people, plants, and livestock across immense distances. You're part of a society utterly defined by the ocean. A world where islands are not isolated landmasses, but stepping stones in a vast, interconnected, watery highway. Your ancestors pushed the boundaries of the known world, expanding outwards from the central Pacific, discovering every habitable island group from Hawaii in the north to Rapa Nui, Easter Island in the east, and Aotearoa, New Zealand in the southwest. This was the last major human migration, filling the largest ocean on Earth. A mainstream historical fact is that Polynesian navigation covered an area of the Pacific larger than all the continental landmasses combined, a feat unmatched. In human history, a quirky tidbit is that these voyages were often not accidental drifts, but deliberate two-way trips, indicating an astonishing level of planning and navigational skill. Historians still argue about the precise homeland of the Polynesian ancestors, and the exact routes taken to settle distant islands, but the sheer scale of their achievement is beyond doubt. For you, standing on that beach, the ocean isn't a barrier, it's a pathway. You've heard the stories of the great navigators, the Tangata Wakita Waka, who could feel the ocean's pulse and read the sky like an open book. You know that every element of your natural world holds a clue, a signpost, a direction. Journey isn't just about reaching a destination. It's about becoming one with the environment, understanding its subtle language. You feel a deep connection to this ocean, a respect born of generations who lived and thrived by its rules. This isn't just exploration. It's a way of life, a profound relationship with the very forces of nature. In the age of European exploration, ships relied on an ever-growing array of tools: the compass for magnetic north, the astrolabe, and later sextant for latitude, and eventually the chronometer for longitude. These were complex manufactured instruments. But for the Polynesians, there was absolutely no compass, no map in the Western sense. Their navigation wasn't about devices you held in your hand. It was about systems you held in your mind, honed over generations. Imagine being on the deck of that canoe, miles from any sight of land. There's no needle pointing north, no parchment scroll detailing currents or islands. The sheer psychological pressure of this reliance on memory and observation is immense. While European navigators were building increasingly sophisticated tools to overcome the ocean's vastness, Polynesians were deepening their understanding of the ocean itself, becoming one with it. This fundamental difference in approach is key. It meant that a Polynesian navigator's knowledge wasn't transferable to a piece of paper. It was embodied, lived, and breathed. The mainstream historical fact is that European navigation, while impressive, relied heavily on technology developed from classical Greek, Arab, and Chinese innovations, whereas Polynesian methods were independently developed and holistic. A quirky tidbit is that early European explorers were often baffled by the Polynesians' ability to find tiny specks of land in the vast Pacific, sometimes even suspecting divine intervention or magic due to their lack of understanding. Historians still argue about the precise origins of specific Polynesian navigational techniques, but it's clear they represent one of humanity's greatest intellectual achievements. For you, the apprentice navigator, this means abandoning all reliance on external aids. You train your eyes to see the subtlest shifts in color on the water, your ears to detect changes in wave patterns, and your body to feel the canoe's motion. It's an immersive learning process, not just memorization from a textbook. You learn that the ocean isn't a chaotic, featureless expanse, but a living, breathing entity with its own predictable rhythms and signs. You're taught to read the fingerprints of islands on the horizon, not just the land itself, but the way a cloud might sit over it, or how a unique swell pattern radiates from its shores. You practice visualizing your journey in your mind, tracking your progress against the moving sun and stars, feeling the direction of the wind and the pull of the currents. This deeply sensory and mnemonic approach means that losing your way is not an option. Your very survival depends on your innate connection to the natural world around you. It's a testament to the power of human observation and memory. When pushed to their absolute limits, one of the most ingenious and fundamental systems employed by Polynesian navigators was not a physical device, but a mental framework, the star. Compass unveiled. This wasn't a compass with a needle. It was a conceptual 360-degree circle of the horizon, divided into points where specific stars rose and set. Every voyage was then oriented around these fixed celestial points. Imagine a clear night sky over the open ocean. Instead of looking for Polaris, the North Star, which isn't visible from much of the southern hemisphere and doesn't directly indicate a cardinal direction for all parts of their voyages, Polynesian navigators identified specific bright stars, or constellations that rose and set at predictable points on the horizon. They memorized these points, creating a mental map of directions. For instance, a star rising exactly in the east would be East Point, and another rising slightly to the north of that would be Northeast Point. This system incorporated not only the rising and setting of stars, but also their zenith passages, when they were directly overhead at specific latitudes. A mainstream historical fact is that the star compass, often called fa, afa, in some Polynesian languages, was a foundational element of their wayfinding, providing a stable directional reference throughout the night. A quirky tidbit: navigators often named these star points after familiar landmarks or cultural symbols from their home islands, making the abstract celestial sphere feel more concrete and memorable. Historians still argue about the precise number of points on these star compasses, as they varied between island groups and specific navigational schools, but the underlying principle remained the same: using the stars as a grid for the horizon. You, the apprentice, learning the star compass is an intense intellectual exercise. You spend countless nights on the shore, then on the practice canoe, observing, memorizing, and reciting the names of the stars and their associated direction points. You learn to recognize subtle constellations, to anticipate where a star will appear or disappear, and to understand how these points shift slightly as your latitude changes. It's not just about knowing the names, it's about feeling their presence, understanding their reliable dance across the sky. When clouds obscured the stars, as they often would, the navigator relied on other clues, but the star compass remained the bedrock. The internal map that allowed them to hold their direction in their mind's eye was a holistic system, integrating astronomical knowledge with keen observation and profound memory. This internal compass allowed them to maintain a consistent bearing across thousands of miles of seemingly featureless ocean, constantly reorienting themselves even after days of cloud cover. It was the ultimate demonstration of how knowledge, when deeply embedded and passed down through generations, could replace technology, while the stars were the night's steady guides. The sun played an equally critical role during the day, particularly with its sun's daily path. Polynesian navigators used the precise points of the sun's rising and setting on the horizon to maintain their directional bearing, a method far more nuanced than simply heading towards the sun. Imagine the sun as a giant celestial clock hand sweeping across the sky from east to west. Every day, its path is predictable, but its rising and setting points on the horizon change with the seasons and your latitude. A master navigator knew these daily and seasonal shifts intimately. At dawn, you'd mark the exact point where the sun first kissed the horizon, a specific house on your mental star compass. Throughout the day, even when the sun was high overhead and no longer offering a horizon reference, the navigator would remember its precise rising point and anticipate its setting point. They would use the sun's apparent movement through the sky and even its reflection on the water to keep their bearing. A mainstream historical fact is that the sun's azimuth, its bearing relative to true north at sunrise and sunset, varies systematically throughout the year, knowledge crucial for accurate daily navigation. A quirky tidbit: navigators could even use the color and intensity of light on the underside of clouds at sunrise and sunset to infer the sun's position and, by extension, their general direction, even when the horizon was obscured. Historians still argue about the precise mathematical precision with which these daily shifts were calculated mentally, but their practical application was remarkably accurate. For you, the apprentice, learning the sun's path is about constant observation. You spend mornings watching the sun's first appearance, noting its angle, its color, and the way its light dances on the waves. You learn to feel the north-south alignment of the sun at midday, when it's at its highest point. You practice pointing your canoe precisely along its track. When clouds rolled in, obscuring the sun for hours or even days, the navigator would dead reckon, keeping track of direction, speed, and time in their mind, then recalibrating when the sun reappeared. This was less about a single point and more about understanding the sun's arc across the sky relative to your position and desired course. It required incredible memory, constant mental calculation, and an almost intuitive connection to time and motion. The shimmering path of sunlight on the water's surface wasn't just beautiful, it was a dynamic, moving line that whispered directions. It's a system that integrated the most powerful celestial body into their daily navigational practice, turning every sunrise and sunset into a deliberate act of wayfinding. Beyond the celestial guides, Polynesian navigators possessed an astonishing ability to read the ocean's surface itself. Tuning into the subtle language of the ocean swell's whisper, these were not random choppy waves, but predictable, consistent undulations radiating from distant islands or weather systems, offering an invisible map underfoot. Imagine being on the canoe, eyes closed, listening, feeling. The ocean is never truly still. There's a constant rhythmic movement of long, low swells that travel for thousands of miles, often originating from distant storm systems, or, crucially, from the refraction of waves around islands. A master navigator could distinguish between different swell patterns, the primary swell, secondary swells, and cross swells, and identify their direction of origin. They literally felt the pulse of the ocean through the hull of their canoe, and even through their own bodies. They could lie down on the deck, close their eyes, and discern these subtle changes, understanding which direction the dominant swell was coming from. A mainstream historical fact is that wave refraction around islands creates distinctive swell, signatures that extend far into the open ocean, acting as invisible navigational beacons. A quirky tidbit: some navigators would even compare the feeling of different swells on their exposed testicles, but it's true, to gauge their direction and strength, highlighting the incredible sensitivity and full-body engagement with their environment. Historians still argue about the precise neurological mechanisms behind this extreme sensory perception, but its effectiveness is well documented. For you, the apprentice, this is perhaps the hardest lesson. It's not something you can see on a chart, it's something you must feel, internalize, and learn to interpret with your entire being. You spend hours feeling the waves, understanding how the canoe responds to each type of swell. You learn that a specific swell always comes from the direction of a known island, even if that island is thousands of miles away and long out of sight. You practice identifying the fainter, more subtle swells, the ones that hint at distant land. These swells could also tell them if they were sailing directly towards or away from an island, or if they were drifting parallel to it. This constant, non-visual input provided a continuous directional reference, especially valuable when clouds obscured the sun and stars. It was like having a giant pulsating compass beneath your feet. This profound connection to the ocean's rhythm allowed them to navigate through periods of poor visibility, maintaining their course when a Western navigator would be completely lost. It's a testament to the incredible human capacity for sensory adaptation and intuitive knowledge. Turning the very movement of the water into a precise navigational tool to transmit the incredibly complex knowledge of ocean swells. Polynesian navigators didn't rely on written charts. Instead, they developed an ingenious mnemonic device, the stick chart's secret. These were not maps to follow, but educational tools used on land to teach apprentices how to interpret the subtle, invisible movements of the ocean. Imagine a network of thin sticks, typically made from coconut midribs, lashed together in an open frame. Small shells, pebbles, or pieces of coral were then tied to these sticks. These weren't literal representations of islands or distances. Instead, the sticks represented swell patterns, how primary swells interacted with secondary swells, how waves refracted around islands, and how currents flowed. The shells or pebbles often marked specific islands. A master navigator would use the stick chart to teach students, using it as a prop to explain the complex and visible dynamics of the ocean. They would trace paths with their fingers, describing the feel of the waves from different directions as if they were actually on the ocean. A mainstream historical fact is that these Micronesian stick charts, Medeo or Rebel Lib charts, primarily from the Marshall Islands, and represented a highly abstract and sophisticated understanding of oceanography. Quirky tidbit: students would spend hours memorizing the patterns and the stories associated with each stick chart, internalizing the knowledge so deeply that they no longer needed the physical chart once at sea. Historians still argue about the precise extent of their use across all Polynesian cultures, but their existence highlights the emphasis on internal rather than external navigational aids. For you, the apprentice, learning with a stick chart is a deeply immersive, tactile experience. You sit with your master on the beach, the stick chart laid out before you. Your master points to a stick, explaining, "This stick represents the great swell that comes from the rising sun, and this shell is our home island. Feel how the waves bend when they meet the land here." You close your eyes, imagining the swells, internalizing the abstract patterns. You learn the different names for swells: Kaluk long, swell rimmer short, choppy waves from local wind, and how they interact. The stick chart is a visual and tactile language, a way to convey the complex, constantly changing rhythm of the ocean in a simplified, memorable form. It's a testament to the power of abstract thought and mnemonic techniques in a pre-literate society. This method ensured that the vital knowledge wasn't lost. It was woven into the very fabric of their cultural education, passed down from generation to generation through observation, recitation, and kinesthetic learning. It was truly a secret known only to the initiated, unlocking the vast, invisible map of the Pacific. When the ocean was vast and the celestial bodies obscured, Polynesians turned to a living compass, birds as guides. These feathered navigators provided crucial, unambiguous signals about the proximity and direction of land, acting as invaluable scouts on long voyages. Imagine days of open ocean, nothing but endless blue and the rhythmic creak of your canoe. The psychological relief of seeing a bird, any bird, is immense. But not just any bird. Polynesian navigators specifically looked for certain species of seabirds, particularly those known to roost on land at night. Birds like the frigate bird, the white tern, and the noddy tern have predictable behaviors. They forage out at sea during the day, but return to land to sleep. If you saw these birds heading consistently in one direction at dusk, you knew that was the way to land. And if they flew out at dawn, you could follow them, knowing they were heading to fishing grounds and would eventually return to land. A mainstream historical fact is that ethno-ornithological knowledge The study of how cultures use birds was highly developed among Polynesians, who understood the habits of dozens of seabird species. A quirky tidbit: navigators could even tell if land was to the east or west by observing when the birds left their nests in the morning later for western land, as they'd wait for the sun to hit the island, and when they returned in the evening, earlier for western land, as they'd race the sunset back. Historians still argue about the exact distances these birds could reliably fly from land, but their general accuracy as indicators was undeniable. For you, the apprentice, learning the language of the birds is as critical as learning the stars. You spend hours observing them, memorizing their flight patterns, their calls, and their specific behaviors. You learn to distinguish between a bird simply passing by and one committed to a specific flight path to or from land. You learn the particular bird paths that lead to known islands, and how different species prefer different types of islands, rocky outcrops versus sandy atolls. When a small flock appears, heading purposefully towards a horizon you previously thought empty, it's not just a sign. It's a surge of hope, a confirmation that your instincts and your other navigational cues are correct. The cries of the birds, once mere sounds, become a symphony of direction. Even the smell of bird droppings or the sight of floating debris like twigs or leaves known as island smell or island debris could indicate proximity to land. It's often carried by these bird-driven air currents. This integration of living creatures into their complex system of wayfinding highlights their profound connection to and understanding of the natural world, turning the sky itself into a bustling highway of information, even on clear days. The visible horizon could be empty for weeks, but Polynesian navigators had another secret weapon in their toolkit: cloud signposts. They could read subtle and specific cloud formations that signaled the presence of hidden islands, or even warned of changing weather systems, long before land appeared on the horizon. Imagine looking up at the vast expanse of the sky. To the untrained eye, clouds are just clouds, but to a master navigator they were dynamic, living maps. They knew that large stationary clouds, particularly cumulus clouds, often form over land due to the heat differential between land and sea. Even if the island itself was below the horizon, the navigator could spot these land clouds rising high into the sky, sometimes appearing as a faint, distant shimmer or a persistent patch of brighter clouds. They could also distinguish between land clouds and rain clouds or other weather systems by their shape, color, and behavior. A mainstream historical fact is that cloud observation, particularly land indications, or NANA-IA, was a vital part of traditional Polynesian wayfinding, allowing detection of islands hundreds of miles away. A quirky tidbit: some navigators could even tell the type of island, high volcanic versus low coral atoll, by the specific shape and density of the clouds hovering above it. Historians still argue about the maximum reliable distance at which these cloud signals could be read, as it depended heavily on atmospheric conditions. But their utility was profound. For you, the apprentice, learning cloud reading is about honing your perception to the most subtle visual cues. You learn to scan the horizon, not just for land, but for persistent patterns in the sky that hint at what lies beyond sight. You learn to differentiate the dull, flat gray of a distant rain squall from the brighter, more textured white of a land cloud. You learn that a persistent, stationary bank of clouds, even if low, suggests something below it, interrupting the normal wind flow. These observations were vital for course correction, allowing navigators to adjust their path towards potential land long before it was directly visible. It was like having an early warning system, transforming the seemingly random overhead weather into a series of crucial directional indicators. Beyond land, cloud formations also provided critical weather forecasting. A navigator could read the approaching squall, the shift in wind direction, or the coming calm by the way the clouds gathered, darkened, or dispersed. This holistic interpretation of the sky, both for destination and for safety, demonstrates their deep, intuitive scientific understanding. It's a testament to turning the seemingly ephemeral into a concrete, it's a reliable navigational tool, proving that even the most fleeting atmospheric phenomena could hold the secret to finding your way home. Beyond reading the subtle signs of the ocean and sky, Polynesian navigators were master mariners because they intimately understood and harnessed the power of the wind's constant song. Wind was not just a force to be endured. It was a reliable directional guide, a source of propulsion, and a key indicator of weather patterns. Imagine the constant presence of the wind on your skin, in your hair, filling the sails of your canoe. To a navigator, the wind had a texture, a temperature, a smell, and a distinct direction. They could feel subtle shifts in its strength and angle, even while sleeping, and interpret what those changes meant for their course or impending weather. They knew the prevailing trade winds that blew reliably across vast stretches of the Pacific, and how these winds would be influenced by local land masses. They would position their canoes to sail directly into or across these winds, using their highly efficient sails to maximize speed and maintain direction. A mainstream historical fact is that Polynesian voyaging canoes were incredibly efficient sailing vessels, capable of sailing against the wind, tacking or beating to windward with remarkable effectiveness. A feat that impressed early European explorers. A quirky tidbit: navigators could even tell how close they were to land by the changing smell of the wind, picking up scents of vegetation, soil, or even wood smoke from distant islands. Historians still argue about the precise windrow systems used by different Polynesian groups, but their deep sensory engagement with wind direction and strength is universally acknowledged. For you, the apprentice, learning the wind's song is about constant, embodied awareness. You stretch out your hand, feeling the wind's pressure, turning your head slightly to discern its precise direction. You watch the rigging and the pandanus sails, observing how the wind fills and strains them. You learn to interpret the subtle sounds of the wind, a steady hum, a rising whistle, a sudden gust, knowing that each sound carries information. When the wind shifted unexpectedly, the navigator wouldn't panic. They'd quickly adjust the sails, reorient the canoe, and perhaps update their mental map. This constant, non-visual feedback loop from the wind was another layer of their sophisticated navigational system. It allowed them to maintain a consistent course, to anticipate weather changes, and to efficiently utilize the very air around them for propulsion and direction. It was like having a vast, invisible hand guiding their journey. A testament to their profound intuitive and empirical understanding of atmospheric dynamics. The wind wasn't just pushing them, it was talking to them constantly, the ocean's surface. It might seem featureless, but beneath it, powerful and predictable forces were at work. Polynesian navigators had a deep understanding of the current's invisible hand, utilizing these steady flows of water to aid their journeys and adjust for drift. A form of natural GPS. Imagine the canoe gliding effortlessly, or perhaps being subtly pushed off course. These were the ocean currents, vast rivers within the sea, driven by global winds, topography, and temperature differences. A master navigator understood that these currents were not random. They followed predictable patterns, sometimes flowing consistently for hundreds or thousands of miles. They knew which currents flowed between certain islands, how they varied with seasons, and how to detect their presence even when the surface of the water seemed calm. By understanding the strength and direction of these currents, they could accurately calculate their true speed over ground, compensate for drift, and even use them as an aid, riding a favorable current towards their destination. A mainstream historical fact is that major ocean currents, like the North and South Pacific JRs, played a crucial role in shaping Polynesian migration patterns, often making one-way voyages easier but return trips harder. A quirky tidbit: navigators could sometimes detect currents by observing subtle changes in water temperature or the behavior of marine life, like specific types of jellyfish or seaweed that were carried by particular flows. Historians still argue about the precise extent of their scientific understanding of oceanography as opposed to empirical knowledge, but their practical application was profound. For you, the apprentice, learning the currents is about sensing the imperceptible. You learn to read the subtle set of the canoe, how it drifts slightly off its intended course despite the steering. You look for lines of debris or changes in the water's color that might indicate a boundary between two currents. You are taught how to calculate your drift over hours or days, always keeping a running mental tally of your true position. This constant mental adjustment was crucial, preventing small errors from compounding into vast disorientation. When you encountered a known current, it was like hitting an invisible highway, speeding you along or gently nudging you in the right direction. The currents could also be dangerous, pushing you off course if miscalculated. This deep empirical knowledge allowed them to use the ocean's very movement as an ally, transforming a potential obstacle into a powerful, albeit invisible, navigational aid. It was a testament to their ability to extract critical information from the most subtle environmental cues, turning the vast, seemingly formless ocean into a legible network of pathways. None of these sophisticated navigational techniques would have been possible without the perfect vessel. The voyaging canoe itself was a masterpiece of engineering, specifically designed for long-distance ocean travel, embodying resilience, efficiency, and adaptability. Imagine these magnificent vessels, typically double-hulled, creating a stable platform that could carry large quantities of people, provisions, and even living plants and animals. The hulls were often carved from massive tree trunks or assembled from planks, expertly joined and sealed. The platform connecting the two hulls provided living space, storage, and a working area for navigation. Sails, usually made from durable woven pandanus or lahala mats, were incredibly efficient at harnessing wind power, allowing them to sail remarkably well both with and against the wind. Steering was done with large, powerful steering paddles, or rudders. A mainstream historical fact is that Polynesian voyaging canoes, or Wā Hawaii, Waka Tahiti, Cook Islands, Waka New Zealand, represented some of the most advanced sailing technology of their time, far surpassing many European vessels in terms of stability, carrying capacity, and maneuverability for ocean crossing. A quirky tidbit: some canoes included ingenious features like built-in freshwater catchment systems on the platforms, collecting rainwater directly into the holes for drinking, showcasing their foresight in resource management. Historians still argue about the precise rigging and sail designs of different regional canoes, but their overall effectiveness for long-distance voyaging is undisputed. For you, the crew member, the canoe is more than just transportation. It's a living extension of your community. You learn every part of it: how to repair a broken lashing, how to patch a leak, how to adjust a sail for maximum efficiency. You understand its sounds, the groan of the timbers, the slap of the waves against the hulls, as intimately as you know your own heartbeat. Its low freeboard allowed the navigators to sit close to the water, feeling the subtle movements of the swells firsthand. Its capacity meant that voyages could last for weeks or months, ensuring the survival of the crew, and the genetic diversity of the plants and animals intended for new settlements. The balance of the canoe, its ability to move gracefully through rough seas, was a testament to generations of accumulated knowledge in shipbuilding. It represented a technological marvel built entirely from natural materials, without metal fasteners, using complex lashing techniques that allowed for flexibility. In durability, this vessel wasn't just a tool. It was an integral part of their wayfinding system, a finely tuned instrument that worked in harmony with the natural environment, enabling them to literally carry their world with them across the vast open sea. The ability to navigate thousands of miles without instruments wasn't just about clever techniques. It was fundamentally about deep memory, oral tradition. This knowledge was painstakingly acquired, rigorously tested, and flawlessly passed down through generations of master navigators, forming an internal, living library of the Pacific. Imagine a world where the entire map of your known world and the pathways between its scattered islands existed not on parchment or paper, but in the minds of a select few. Navigational knowledge was considered sacred, a powerful inheritance, and its transmission was a highly ritualized and demanding process. Apprentices would spend years, sometimes decades, training under master navigators, memorizing vast amounts of information: star paths, swell patterns, cloud formations, bird behaviors, current flows, the precise arrival points for dozens of islands. This wasn't just rote memorization. It involved understanding complex interrelationships and being able to apply them dynamically on a moving ocean. This was a mainstream historical fact. The navigational academies, like the Pates Dao and the Society Islands, were rigorous institutions where oral traditions, chants, and practical training ensured the continuity of wayfinding knowledge. A quirky tidbit. Some navigational chants could list hundreds of stars in their specific rising setting points, essentially a sung star chart, allowing navigators to refresh their memory while at sea. Historians still argue about the loss of much of this oral tradition after European contact, as written methods replaced traditional ones. But modern efforts are reviving these practices. For you, the apprentice, learning this knowledge is a holistic, sensory experience. You repeat chants listing star names and their associated wind directions until they are burned into your memory. You spend hours observing the subtle nuances of the ocean and sky, then recounting your observations to your master who corrects and refines your interpretations. You use stick charts on land, but then visualize them in your mind while at sea, constantly checking your internal map against the living environment. The elders in your community are revered not just for their age, but for being living repositories of this vital knowledge. Their stories aren't just entertainment, they are lessons woven with practical details and spiritual meaning. When they tell tales of ancestral voyages, they are also teaching the principles of navigation. This profound reliance on oral tradition and memory meant that every master navigator was a walking, talking, living library of the ocean. It ensured that the collective wisdom of generations was preserved and passed on, allowing Polynesians to repeatedly achieve what others deemed impossible. It's a testament to the power of human memory and cultural transmission, showing that the most effective tools aren't always those you can hold in your hand, but those you carry in your mind and heart. The Polynesians didn't just sail from island to island, they actively pushed the boundaries of their known world, consistently testing the limits of their navigational abilities and their courage. These were deliberate voyages of exploration, ventures into the truly unknown. Driven by a spirit of discovery and the need for new resources, imagine standing on your home island, knowing that beyond the horizon lies nothing but endless ocean. As far as the eye can see, yet your ancestors deliberately set out, not just to find a specific island, but to discover new ones. These were not accidental drift voyages. They were carefully planned expeditions, often involving multiple canoes, carrying entire communities, their plants, and their animals, all essential for establishing new settlements. They understood the concept of wayfinding, not just finding a known destination, but finding any land within a vast search area, and then being able to return home to report their findings. This meant sailing back and forth, exploring large sectors of the ocean, a massive undertaking. A mainstream historical fact is that voyaging corridors were sometimes used, where canoes would spread out over a wide area to increase the chances of hitting an island. A quirky tidbit. Some Polynesian traditions speak of exploring out from a fan, where canoes would radiate out from a known island in a systematic search pattern, ensuring comprehensive coverage of potential landfalls. Historians still argue about the precise motivations for these exploratory voyages: population pressure, curiosity, political strife, but their systematic nature and incredible success are undeniable. For you, the voyager on such an expedition, this is the ultimate test. You sail for weeks, perhaps months, often beyond the sight of any land you've ever known. You rely purely on your navigational knowledge, your training, and your absolute faith in the system passed down to you. Every sign, a change in swell, a distant cloud, a passing bird is scrutinized with heightened intensity. You are not just sailing. You are searching, feeling your way across the vastness. When that faint, elusive land cloud appears, or a seabird commits to a definitive flight path, it's a moment of profound triumph. A confirmation that your ancestral knowledge holds true, even in the uncharted. The sense of achievement, of discovering a new world, improving the efficacy of your wayfinding, is immense. It pushed them to adapt, to refine their knowledge, and to truly master the art of turning the immense Pacific into their own navigable backyard. It speaks volumes about their confidence, their planning, and their sheer, audacious spirit. The true genius of Polynesian navigation lay not in any single technique, but in the seamless integration of all of them, creating a living map in mind. A master navigator was a walking, breathing, sensory embodiment of the ocean, constantly absorbing, processing, and interpreting countless environmental cues. Imagine trying to navigate by simultaneously tracking the stars, feeling multiple swell patterns, watching cloud formations, interpreting bird behavior, sensing wind shifts, and accounting for currents, all without writing anything down. Was the reality of the Polynesian navigator? They didn't just know these elements, they felt them, smelled them, heard them, and understood their dynamic interplay. Their brain was the supercomputer, constantly processing an overwhelming stream of sensory data and synthesizing it into a coherent, real-time understanding of their position and trajectory. This holistic, sensory-driven approach meant that they didn't just find islands, they understood the entire ocean as a living, interconnected system. A mainstream historical fact is that the Polynesian wayfinding system was incredibly sophisticated, involving simultaneous reading of multiple environmental factors rather than reliance on single points of reference. A quirky tidbit, navigators often kept a mental track record not just of their own canoe's path, but of the imagined path of their home island away from them, as the Earth rotated, allowing them to calculate a return course from any point. Historians still argue about the cognitive load and specific mnemonic techniques used to manage such vast amounts of dynamic information. But the results speak for themselves. For you, the apprentice, this is the pinnacle of wayfinding. It's not just about memorizing facts, it's about transforming your perception, expanding your awareness until you become an extension of the ocean itself. You'll learn to trust your gut, that intuitive sense of direction cultivated through years of intense training and observation. You learn to hold the entire journey in your mind, the departure point, the destination, the intermediate islands, the patterns of wind and swell throughout. When a squall hits and obscures all visible cues, you don't panic, you lean on the internalized map, feeling the subtle shifts in the canoe's motion, recalling the last known swell direction, remembering the last bird call. It's a profound testament to human cognitive ability, pushing the boundaries of what the uninstrumented mind can achieve. This living map in the mind was fluid, adaptable, and far more resilient than any parchment chart that could be torn or lost. It allowed them to navigate through storms, recover from being blown off course, and confidently return to their distant homes. It embodies a deep ecological intelligence, a profound understanding that the environment isn't something external to be conquered, but an intricate partner to be understood and collaborated with. As we conclude our journey through the astonishing world of Polynesian wayfinding, we're left with a profound appreciation for their legacy of wayfinding. This wasn't just a set of techniques. It was a philosophy, a deep cultural identity forged in the crucible of oceanic exploration, and one that continues to inspire and be revived today. Imagine the modern world. It's utterly dependent on satellites and digital screens to tell us where we are. Now consider the ancient Polynesians, who achieved far more impressive feats of navigation with nothing but their senses, their knowledge, and their connection to the natural world. Their system proved that humanity's greatest tools are often innate. Keen observation, profound memory, and an ability to read the environment as a continuous, interconnected map. Their success wasn't just about reaching a destination, it was about the journey itself, about the ongoing process of understanding and adapting to the ocean's myriad signs. This legacy is not just historical. It's a living, breathing tradition. A mainstream historical fact is that the revival of traditional Polynesian voyaging, spearheaded by organizations like the Polynesian Voyaging Society, with canoes like the Hakulei, has proven the viability and accuracy of ancient wayfinding methods in the modern era. A quirky tidbit, the Hakulei's modern navigators undergo years of intense training, learning the ancient star compass and swell reading, often sleeping on the deck to re-immerse themselves in the sensory world of their ancestors. Historians still argue about the ultimate factors that led to the decline of long-distance voyaging in some areas, after the initial settlement phase. But the recent revival demonstrates its enduring power. For you, witnessing this legacy means understanding that the Polynesian achievements weren't random acts of daring, but the result of centuries of scientific inquiry passed down with meticulous precision. It's a reminder that true knowledge often comes from deep engagement with the world around us rather than reliance on external gadgets. Their story is a powerful counter-narrative to the idea that only Western science could conquer the globe. It teaches us about resilience, adaptability, and the profound wisdom that can be found in indigenous knowledge systems. Allowed them to settle the last great habitable places on Earth, creating diverse cultures across a vast ocean. And as the Hakila sails today, guided by the very same stars and swells that led their ancestors, it carries not just a crew, but the enduring spirit of human exploration, a timeless story of profound connection to the sea and sky. It's a legacy that teaches us that even in our interconnected world, there's still immense wisdom to be found in looking up, listening closely, and feeling the pulse of the earth beneath our feet.